Hello everyone, welcome to MonteyCodes, and this will be a video tutorial. This will be my version of a Hello World to get you up and started. So I wanted to do something different instead of a boring, just a simple, boring little, like I said, a Hello World that doesn't do much of anything. So in this tutorial, we're going to take a look at a fully functional calculator app. Again, it's a multi-platform application. We use React Expo and TypeScript. But more importantly, we also will explore how professional design patterns and coding principles can make our code cleaner, scalable, and easier to maintain. So let's get started. So in the description below, you will see a link to my GitHub page, and you will need to copy this address here so that way you can clone the URL. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. And then I always like to make it its own directory. We'll just call it calculator. Can't spell today. Calculator. There we go. And of course go into that directory. And now let's clone it and get that URL. And as I've stated in my other videos, my editor of choice is VS Code. You can use Sublime or Atom if you're comfortable with that. I am going to always use VS Code. So let's open that up and let's get started. So before we start opening up things and looking at some of the files, we want to install npm into the local directory. Now, the way that I created this, yes, it's a little bit of a folder within a folder within a folder, or a directory within a directory. But however, you can simply just change directory in here and go in from calculator to multi-calculator to my calculator, which this will be the local folder. And then once you go into that local folder, you want to install npm, so that way all the modules and all the other little files that are needed will go into that directory. And then once that's done, you don't need to worry about these warnings. Basically, all that means is that some versions are no longer supported. They're getting deprecated out, depreciated out. And just if you want, again, if you want some more information, it always gives you a link to that. But we're not going to be concerned with that very much, since this is just going to be a simple hello world to make sure that your simulators and your emulators are functioning, and then to give you an idea of how the rest of my videos are going to be. We're going to be looking at, in this particular one, the dry method. Don't repeat yourself is what it stands for, and some other little design patterns and methods, and not methods, but design principles and patterns, and why it's important to use them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other first thing that we need to do. Now, as you see within my calculator directory, we have many different subfolders. We have a context, again, the node modules from the npm. We have screen, styles, utilities, and what those are is going to be subfolders that you have files within it. You always want to basically separate your logic, your styles, styles meaning like your CSS files. You always want to separate the logic from that, and your screens, your layouts. You always want to separate those things, so that way your code is not in one or two main files, because if you need to make any changes or something like that, that can get messy really quickly. Now, a simple calculator app, well, I think this one is simple. You can do that, but it's not following the best practices, because as stated, if you put everything into one folder, one file, it can get messy and really quick, and you'll have something what is called spaghetti code, where things are written all over the place, and you may have a hard time, if you don't comment well, locating certain things, even if you use the Control F or Command F to try to find a specific method or a file or something to that factor. It's a lot easier just to separate your files and separate your logic from your CSS files of how that's going to look and your structure of your layout, the way it's going to look. You got to think of it almost like a website where you have your main structure, which is your HTML file, then you have the look of it, which is your CSS file and everything. So you kind of want to take, since React was basically built first for the web and then it went into multi-platform, it kind of uses that same kind of file structure where you want to separate things. And that is another one, single responsibility, separations of concerns, and the other one. But like I said, without going into that, we're just going to stick with one, the dry principle on here. But anyways, before going on to that, we need to create a components file. Now let's go back to my GitHub page and see right here. We need to create this file. It's called calculator button. Now there's version 1 and there's just the single version, that's the default one. And I try to put as much information in here. Again, here's that dry one. Don't repeat yourself. Style logic centralizes maps. I try to put as much comment in here as possible to help you out and saying, okay, this is what this does, this is what this does, this is, so on and so on and so on. But there's 2 versions on here, and I will explain why. But for right now, we just need the first version. However, since this file is going to be in a folder called components, we need to first create the components folder. So go again to your local directory, click folder, and create it one known as components. I can't type today for some reason. Now in here, you're going to create that file called calculator button .typescript. Okay, so now go to the GitHub page and just no, I don't want to download it. Okay, I'm on my side, but anyways, so it's not. Come on, no, no, no. No, I don't want. Wait, is it copy? There we go. There. Let's try it again. Just not working today for me. And simple copy paste. And okay, and save that. And then let's go ahead and let me see. Do I want to talk about that stuff now? Now, let's go ahead and run it. As I said, this is my version of a HelloWorld. It's a calculator app, and it has a lot more functionality than a simple HelloWorld. But the focus on here and in my channel is software architecture, design patterns, and principles. Okay, so let's say that 10 times fast. Let's go ahead and now bring up your terminal and run npx expo start, and everything should come up just fine. Let's start with the iOS simulator, so just choose I. And okay, so I need to take care of that, but that's coming up. My calculator. And here is, like I said, my version of Hello World. Let's try a little arithmetic here. And that should be 6. Okay, so 4 minus 65 minus this. And, okay, now clear that. Okay, so basically, let's try this one. Dark mode, light mode. Okay. Some basic arithmetic here. You got your power, your squares, parentheses that you can use, that kind of thing. Little text box down here, well, display view, showing the history of your calculations, and then this little button will clear it. Again, the little dark mode, light mode, positive, negative, percentages, that kind of stuff. But the main important thing here was to make sure that the simulator is working. So now let's check the Android side, which is the emulator. However, for here, I want to try to choose other than the default one, so I'm going to select Shift A, and my Android emulator should appear. There we go. Let's try 9. That's like a good one. And that may take a moment. And let's see what happens. Okay, it's thinking. Oh, this is a new one. So I need to install Expo Go on there. So that's shouldn't take long, but another moment. Here we go, building, building, building. And here we go. Now let's try some of this same thing. Yeah, go away. Let's do 2, 3, that should be 6. Okay, that works. Now let's try -5, simple arithmetic, 4. Let's try 49 negative plus 2 equals on here. Okay. Again, I wrote this. There may be some things of why, you may think, okay, does this, does that, doesn't, this should, I just noticed that after I do a calculation, that should be zeroed out, but that's just a simple code thing that can be fixed. But anyways, the important thing that I wanted to show it here is to make sure that the emulators and simulators are being available using VS Code, as I did with my previous tutorial video on how to set up your environment. I also within my GitHub pages there was like a simple hello world. Now that's a true hello world because all it is basically is a blank TypeScript file, and that one will say hello Android and hello iOS or something like that. But for in here, I wanted to I created this really quick so that way it could, be something a little bit more, informative than just making sure that things work. But now that we can also make sure that things work, we're also able to view the other emulators that we created. If you want to create furthermore emulators, I do have a video on that, on how to add iOS simulators and emulators. So let's clear this history and go ahead and close that. And then we need to stop the server on here. So Control C to stop the server. And then let's just bring this on down. Now, the last thing that I wanted to discuss, I mentioned the dry method about don't repeat yourself. So let's go back to the GitHub page. Don't repeat yourself. The dry principle, rather. I have in here, let's see, and home screen and calculator button. Let's go back to the VS Code, home screen. There's a little section that is repeated and that you can approve on. And I left that specifically in here so that way you can take a look at this file and calculator button file. And then you'll notice that there's something repeated in there and that there's a better way of handling this situation. And I talk about that in here. Look under button types, look under calculator button version -1 and home screen -1 rather. This is the updated code on there, and look at home screen, and here's the updated code for that. Then if you look at button types, I discuss one way that you can correct it. So I'll leave this for you to go ahead and work on. And if you have any issues after you make these adjustments, or if you have some better solutions for this, please always go ahead and leave a comment below the description. And I would like to hear your feedback on that and share some ideas. But let's see what else we got in here. And here's another page that's included where I discuss all the design principles and patterns used in this calculator app, how we have the single responsibility principle used. And again, this one mainly focused on the dry principle. And I left a little area of the code in there that could be updated and make it a little bit more efficient. We used the open-close principle, and I discussed that a little bit, separation of concerns. I did mention that way in the beginning, how it's best to separate your logic, your layout, and your displays and everything like that. So that way, when you need to make an update to a certain section of the code, you don't have to go searching. You just go to that specific file within that specific directory, and you can handle that code. And then you don't have to go to multiple places to go and correct it. All you have to do is when in those specific files that call that method or that function rather, or that file in that particular case, that's all that needs to be done is update that one. And so that's one of, like it says here, divide responsibilities into distinct sections of code. Let's see. And you always want to be having validation. They call it defensive programming. Writing code that anticipates and handles possible errors or misuse, especially when I go into the secure coding section, talk about how just some of the things like SQL injections, buffer overflows, and those types of things, and how to basically handle and deal with those type of situations so that way your code is secure and all that. And because that's a main thing that happens a lot in modern code is they have backdoors open or just simple mistakes, and then if they have a search bar or something, you could possibly throw some SQL injection in there and see some answers from the database or whatever, without going too specific, but generally. And then talk about design patterns, containers, patterns, and strategy patterns. But I have some information on that. And then there's other places within my GitHub page that I talk a little bit more about design principles, patterns, and software architecture. So I encourage you to give it a read. Again, if you ever have any comments or something, just let me know. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me today. As I stated in the beginning of this tutorial, you can get a full clone of this project from my GitHub page under MonteyCalculator. I hope after reviewing my comments and literature within this repository, and it helps you understand how professional React apps can be structured. Please subscribe to MonteyCodes for more tutorials like this, where we don't just code, we architect clean, scalable solutions. See you in the next one.